The gallery opening was supposed to be mine, which is a sentence that still sounds bitter even 3 years later when I have mostly made peace with what happened, mostly learned to think about that night without feeling my chest tighten in the specific way it tightens when you remember being publicly humiliated by someone you trusted completely. But standing in that gallery on a Thursday in October, watching people admire paintings I had created while someone else smiled and accepted congratulations for making them, that was the moment I understood that friendship and business should probably never occupy the same space, and that some betrayals are so perfectly executed you do not even realize you have been betrayed until it is already too late to stop it. My name is Riley Cameron, and I am a painter, or at least I was trying to be a painter before everything that happened, before I learned that talent and hard work matter significantly less than you think they do when someone else controls access to the rooms where your work gets seen. I had spent 2 years creating a collection I was genuinely proud of, 23 paintings that explored memory and loss through this technique I had developed that layered transparent oils in a way that made images appear and disappear depending on the angle you viewed them from. It was the kind of work that sounds pretentious when you try to explain it, but actually worked when you saw it in person, the kind of work that gallery owners had started responding to after years of polite rejections. My best friend Cara was the one who made the connection that changed everything, or at least that is what I thought at the time. She knew someone who knew the owner of a mid-level gallery in Brooklyn that was starting to show emerging artists, and she set up a meeting for me. Talked me up in a way I could never talk myself up because I have always been better at making things than selling them. The gallery owner, a woman named Patricia Morrison, who had that specific kind of confidence that comes from having good taste and knowing it, looked through my portfolio for maybe 20 minutes and then said something I had been waiting years to hear. She said she wanted to do a show. A real show, not a group exhibition where I would get one wall and share the space with 5 other people, but an actual solo opening with my name on the announcement and a reception where people would come specifically to see my work. I should have questioned why it happened so easily after years of struggle, should have wondered why Patricia seemed so certain about work she had only seen in photographs and quick studio visits. But I was 29 and desperate to believe I was finally getting the break I had been working toward. And when you want something badly enough, you stop asking questions that might reveal it is not as solid as you need it to be. Cara offered to help me prepare, said she knew how these things worked, knew what collectors looked for, knew how to price things and present them and write the kind of artist statement that made people take you seriously. I was grateful. Genuinely, completely grateful, because I had no idea how to navigate any of that, and she seemed confident about all of it, seemed to understand the business side of art in ways I had never bothered to learn. We worked together for 3 months getting ready for the show. She came to my studio almost every day, helped me select which pieces would work best, gave me feedback on paintings I was still finishing, handled communications with Patricia about logistics and timing and all the details I would have stressed about if someone else was not managing them. She was the kind of friend who made you feel like you were not alone in something that usually felt very solitary, and I loved her for that. Trusted her completely, because why would you not trust someone who was investing that much time in helping you succeed? The first strange thing happened about 2 weeks before the opening. I went to the gallery to check on the installation setup, make sure the lighting would work with the way my paintings needed to be viewed, and I found Cara already there talking to Patricia in the back office. Not strange by itself. Cara had been helping coordinate everything, so it made sense she would be involved in setup decisions, but something about the way they stopped talking when I walked in felt off. Not guilty exactly, but private, like I had interrupted a conversation I was not supposed to be part of. I mentioned it to Cara later, and she said they had just been discussing some logistical details about the reception, nothing important, and I accepted that because I was too focused on the actual show to worry about what seemed like minor weirdness. The second strange thing happened 3 days before the opening. I got a call from a journalist who wrote about emerging artists for a local arts magazine. Someone Cara said she had contacted about potentially covering the show. He wanted to do a phone interview about my background and influences and the work I would be showing. Standard stuff that I had prepared for. But when we started talking, some of his questions felt slightly wrong. He kept referring to the collection as a collaborative project, kept asking about my creative partnership, kept using we when I expected he would use I. I corrected him a few times, explained that this was my solo work, and he said, "Oh, of course, he must have misunderstood the press materials." That should have been the moment I stopped and looked more carefully at what was actually happening, but I did not. I was too close to the finish line, too invested in believing this was finally working out. The opening was on a Thursday evening in mid-October, one of those perfect fall nights where the temperature is exactly right and the light has that golden quality that makes everything feel significant. I arrived at the gallery an hour before it officially opened, dressed in the one good outfit I owned that made me look like someone whose work deserved to be shown in a professional space, nervous and excited in equal measure. The paintings looked better than I had imagined they would have. Patricia and her team had installed them perfectly, spacing and lighting exactly right, the whole room arranged in a way that guided people through the collection in the order I had intended. I stood there looking at 2 years of my life on those walls and felt something I had not felt in a long time. Pride. Actual, uncomplicated pride in something I had made. Cara arrived 30 minutes before the doors opened. She looked different somehow, more polished than usual, wearing a dress I had never seen before and carrying herself with a confidence that felt slightly unfamiliar. She hugged me and said congratulations and told me this was going to be amazing. And I believed her because she was my best friend, and why would she say those things if they were not true? People started arriving right at 7, more people than I had expected, the gallery filling quickly with collectors and critics and other artists and people whose presence suggested this was being taken seriously. I stood near the entrance, greeting people who came up to talk to me, answering questions about technique and inspiration, watching strangers examine work I had created in private and now had to defend or explain in public. Then Patricia stepped to the center of the room and tapped a glass to get everyone's attention. I assumed this was the standard welcome speech, the part where the gallery owner thanks everyone for coming and introduces the artist. I was preparing myself to say a few words, had rehearsed a short statement about the work that I hoped would sound not as nervous as I felt. But Patricia did not introduce me. She introduced Cara. I remember the exact moment I understood what I was hearing because it felt physical, like something shifting inside my chest, like the floor becoming slightly less solid under my feet. Patricia was talking about Cara's vision for this collection, Cara's innovative technique, Cara's exploration of memory and loss. She was describing my work, using phrases I had written in my artist's statement, but she was attributing all of it to someone else. I looked at Cara. She was standing next to Patricia now, smiling in a way I had never seen her smile before, accepting acknowledgement for paintings she had not made, for ideas she had not conceived, for 2 years of work she had only witnessed. And she did not look surprised, did not look confused or uncomfortable, or any of the things you would expect someone to look if they were being mistakenly credited for someone else's accomplishments. She looked ready, like this was expected, like this had been planned. I should have said something immediately, should have interrupted and corrected, and made everyone in that room understand what was actually happening. But I did not. I just stood there, silent and frozen, while Patricia continued talking about Cara's vision for this collection, Cara's artistic journey, and how proud the gallery was to launch Cara's career with this exceptional first show. The speech ended. People applauded. Cara said a few words of thanks that I barely heard through the ringing in my ears. And then the evening continued like nothing was wrong, like this was a completely normal gallery opening where the artist being celebrated was actually the person who had created the work on the walls. People came up to me throughout the night. Some of them recognized me from my studio or from previous shows I had been part of, and they seemed confused about why I was there, but my name was not on anything. I told them I helped with some of the technical aspects, which was not a lie, but also not the truth, and they nodded and moved on to talk to Cara instead. I watched Cara work the room with a skill I had not known she possessed, watched her discuss the paintings with collectors using terminology and explanations I had taught her during our preparation sessions, watched her accept praise and answer questions and make connections that should have been mine, all while wearing that same ready smile that made it clear she knew this was coming and had prepared accordingly. I left before the reception ended, walked out into the October night feeling nothing at first and then everything all at once. Betrayal, yes, but also confusion, because I couldn't understand how this had happened, how she had convinced Patricia that the work was hers, how she had executed this so perfectly that even the journalist I spoke to had been given materials suggesting collaboration. I spent that entire night and most of the next day trying to figure out what to do. I had photographs of the work in progress in my studio. I had sketches and preliminary studies. I had receipts for materials. But I also understood that proving you made something is harder than it sounds when someone else's name is already on it in a gallery setting, when a professional institution has publicly validated their claim. I called an attorney who specialized in intellectual property, explained the situation. She asked if I had contracts, formal agreements, anything in writing that established ownership. I did not. Everything with Cara had been informal, built on friendship and trust rather than legal documentation. The attorney said I could probably build a case, but it would be expensive and slow and uncertain, and that even if I won, I would be known as the artist who had to sue to prove her own work was hers. So I did something different. I went back to my studio and I painted. Not the same style, not the layered, transparent technique I had developed for the collection Cara had stolen. Something new, something I had been thinking about for months, but had not started because I was too focused on preparing for the show that was supposed to be mine. I painted for 6 weeks, barely slept, barely left my studio, created 11 new pieces that were better than anything I had done before, different enough that they could not be confused with the stolen collection, but clearly made by the same hand if you knew what to look for. Then I contacted every person who had attended Cara's opening, not with accusations or explanations, just with a simple invitation to a private studio viewing of new work by Riley Cameron. I included images of 3 of the new paintings. I mentioned that I had recently completed a solo project and was interested in feedback before deciding on next steps. 42 people responded saying they would come, including Patricia Morrison. The viewing was on a Saturday afternoon in my studio, which was not a fancy gallery, but was clearly a working artist space, clearly a room where someone actually made things rather than just presented them. People arrived in small groups, and I let them wander, let them look at the new paintings, and also at the preliminary sketches and studies still pinned to my walls, evidence of process and development that I had not thought to preserve with the stolen collection. Patricia arrived near the end. She spent a long time looking at the new work without saying anything, then asked if she could see anything else I had made recently. I showed her the sketches and process documentation I had kept this time, showed her photographs of the paintings in various stages, showed her exactly what it looked like when someone actually created work rather than just claimed it. She looked at everything for maybe 20 minutes. Then she asked me a question. The collection at the gallery, the technique with the layered transparent oils, you developed that? I said yes. And the paintings currently on display under Cara's name, you painted those? I said yes again. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked if I had documentation proving that, and I showed her what I had. Studio photographs with timestamps, material receipts, sketches that showed the development of techniques visible in the finished paintings. She thanked me for showing her the work and left without saying anything else. 2 days later, the gallery removed Cara's show. Not publicly, not with announcements or explanations, just quietly took down the paintings and canceled the remaining events. I received an email from Patricia saying she would like to discuss representation if I was interested, that she had made a serious error in judgment and wanted the opportunity to correct it. I never responded to that email. Did not want representation from someone who had been that easy to deceive, who had validated work without properly verifying who created it. But 3 of the collectors who came to my studio viewing contacted me directly about purchasing pieces. Then 2 more. Within a month, I had sold 6 of the 11 new pieces at prices higher than anything in the stolen collection had been listed for. Cara called me once after the gallery show came down. I did not answer. She sent a long text message explaining that it had not been planned, that things just happened and she went along with it, that she had never meant to hurt me. I blocked her number without responding because there was nothing she could say that would matter. What I learned from all of this is not that people are untrustworthy or that friendship means nothing or any of the bitter conclusions you might expect. What I learned is that the best response to having something stolen is not to fight over who owns it. It is to make something better that cannot be taken, to demonstrate capability so clearly that the theft becomes irrelevant. Cara got 1 show with my work. I got a career with my own. That is not revenge exactly, but it is something better. It is proof that what matters is not who takes credit for what you have already done, but whether you can keep doing work that makes the theft look small in comparison.